Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just in the moment still trying to get things organised, then we'll kick ourselves off from there. But thank you for coming along early. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome along to the first series of 2026 from Master Builders of ACT in our Building Better series. What we're going to try to achieve this year is to run through on a monthly type arrangement on different topics that you as members have brought to our attention, and we're going to present and provide that information. The session today is going to be run by the advisory team. The team itself will be presenting on their series of different areas to do with the compliance issues for yourselves. So all I'm asking first up for everybody is wait for the presentations to go through, leave your questions to the end of the session, or put them in the chat line and they'll be answered as to go on there. But my part is welcome along to the series and thank you for kindly turning up. The first person on the list is going to be the Workplace Relations Advisory team, and they're going to work their way through it. So I'll pass across to Melissa and let her lead on that part. Thank you very kindly for attending.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for registering. My name is Melissa. I am the Senior Workplace Relations Advisor here at the MBA. Joining me is my colleague, Sarah. She is the Junior Workplace Relations Advisor. We will be presenting our first compliance checks for the 2026 year as it relates to the workplace relations area. I'm just quickly going to run through our slides to there. This is our team, the Workplace Relations and Advisory team. At any time when you are in need of workplace relations, building advisory, or health and safety advice, please feel free to contact any member of our team and we will assist you as soon as we can. The agenda today will be running through key compliance obligations across the workplace, building sites, work health and safety. We'll also give you a little bit of a background of a new MBA ACT compliance checklist that we have introduced here, and just give you a broad background of what that entails and what you can access. Like Scott said, if you have any questions, please keep to the end, but feel free to pop them in the chat and we will address them. All right, so moving right on to the Workplace Relations Compliance Checklist. Today, we will run you through the three topics, basically: employment records, record keeping, and some key changes that happened across the 2025 space, and one or two aspects you can expect to see in the 2026 year. Again, these are all the topics that you can question us on at any time. And if there are any questions, please pop them in the chat. I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who will start taking you through the checklists, your compliance checks for 2026.
Hi guys, I'm Sarah. As Melissa said, I'm a Junior Workplace Relations Advisor here. So to start off with checking your employment details, the new year, starting 2026 off, it is the perfect time to do a quick sanity check of your employment records. At minimum, employee files that you have on record, they should clearly show who your employees, the most basic details, like who your employee is, when they started, their employment type, and the employer's legal name and ABN, etc. If there have been updates to the employee's employment status, for example, if they have changed from casual to part-time or full-time, whether this is recorded and those records are up to date. From there, the review is of the foundations of the relationship between the employer and the employee, because the onus is on you to prove that you have done everything correctly in this space. So again, check your contracts are current, reflective of how people actually work, whether things like overtime and ordinary hours are reported correctly, is the correct award or enterprise agreement applied, if there are IFAs, individual flexibility agreements, if they are properly documented, compliant, and up to date. For some key things to look out for this year, in January, we recommend that you review your workload and employee requirements. So that includes key projects, construction timelines, ensure compulsory employee training is up to date, and where you need to make sure you book training as soon as needed. Set dates for key milestones, and remember that the quarterly superannuation payments start 1st of October till 31st of December. In July this year, the increases to minimum wage standards by the Fair Work Commission will come into place. Quarterly super payments as well from April to June. There will be financial year end audits if that's applicable to you, and remember to renew your Master Builders membership as well. Do you want to go ahead with this?
Yeah. Okay. One of the key things that have come out from the 2025 year is a narrowed view of record keeping. And there have been some cases, we will go through the case law in a minute, that have come out and really just highlighted how important it is to have a proper record keeping system in place. This is especially important if you have employees that are on awards, but that have separate arrangements. For instance, if you pay above award rates, or if you have additional entitlements, think enterprise bargaining agreements, think flexible work arrangements, think employee entitlements such as bonuses. These are really important to keep proper record of, and we will just go through what a record keeping, the absolute minimum record keeping you should be doing, what that would look like, and then we'll take you through the case law that has come out in 2025 to just highlight how important that is. So first off, record keeping pay rates. You should have a proper record of the rates that you are paying your employees. This would include before and after tax pay rates, as well as any deductions that you apply to those wages. Now we have a top tip here. The MBA ACT does have a cheat sheet for you. We have our annual wages for the Building and Construction Award, and some key awards for the industry that you can just inquire about, and we can send those to you, and those does show the proper wages, the minimum wages in accordance with those awards. So if you need those, please reach out. And those will be available obviously from 1 July again, once the minimum wage increases have been published. In terms of your pay slips, minimum requirements for your pay slips are your employer name and ABN. The employee's details, this would be his name, his surname, and what his position would be. The date that the payment is made, the pay period, for instance, 7 days, a month, 2 weeks, the before and after tax rate, your hourly or your annual rate, as well as any allowances and loadings. It should be reflected on the payslip. This includes overtime or any hourly wages. Record of time work. This is extremely important, as will become apparent once we discuss that case. You should have a proper record of the hours of ordinary pay, as it is defined in the certain award or the relevant award that applies to your employees, as well as any overtime that has been worked and paid, or RDO arrangements. Leave. Now, this is something that your payroll should keep. If you have a payroll system in place, this is something that should be kind of an automated process, but you should keep track of leave hours that your employees are taking, how much leave is remaining. If you have a leave that a purchasing leave arrangement in place, that should be reported. Any amount of unpaid leave that the employee has taken or taking leave in advance. Superannuation. This is going to become extremely important as there are some changes coming into superannuation in 2026. Superannuation should be recorded as the amounts paid, the pay period, the date that those payments are made, the fund name, which is usually selected by the employee, as well as any employee contributions that is deducted from their wages. Termination. This, I would say, is one of the main areas that we receive queries on, which includes performance management, termination, reasons for termination, and how those should be dealt with. We would recommend keeping a very detailed written record of the entire termination process from start to finish. Compulsory record keeping would be the date of termination, reason for termination, keeping that letter of termination, which sets out the reasons, and a proof of payment of entitlements. Now, we at the MBA ACT have some general guidance that we can provide in any performance management process, termination process. We also have some drafts available to you. For instance, letters for a final warning, letters for a first warning, notices to show cause. So please reach out if that is anything that you are dealing with. We would really recommend that you follow the proper process. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to give us a call. So this is the case I was talking about, which have some serious implications for record keeping. You might know it as the underpayment case of Woolies and Coles. It's got a really long name. The Fair Work Ombudsman took Woolies and Coles to the court because they have some reports of underpayments. Now, a brief background of this is that the employees were covered by an award, the General Retail Industry Award. The supermarkets did pay above award rates, and they had those above award rates included and written down in an annualized salary package and agreement. What happened was the employers used set-off clauses for bonus payments, performance payments, as well as the higher award rates, the higher wages paid, to set off against overtime worked. And what the court actually found was you cannot use set-off clauses to make up for annual entitlements. For instance, you have to keep record of all hours worked, entitlements paid, and entitlements that become due on for each payment period. That would be 7 days, fortnightly, or whatever the payment period is that you agree with your employees. For instance, the higher annual wage or the higher wage per hour cannot be used to set off overtime worked over an annual period. Other contractual entitlements, for instance, bonus payments, performance payments, cannot be used to set off overtime worked. It needs to be reported per payment period. Otherwise, you will be found guilty, or you can be found guilty of underpayments and the penalties that comes with that. Now, Coles and Woolies have not received their final judgment on this. Only an interim judgment has been issued, but they are facing a remediation bill of around $1 billion. So that just really highlights the consequences of underpayments and not keeping proper records, as they were unable to provide proper records of hours worked and overtime applied, for instance, per pay period. So what do we learn from this case and the recommendations we make for proper record keeping is please review your salary arrangements. Make sure that your enterprise bargaining agreements or contractual entitlements satisfy the award requirements or minimum requirements per pay period and that it is not an annualized set-off. Please review your record keeping practices. Your payroll, rostering, and record and timekeeping systems have to be able to produce accurate data that reflects these hours worked or the entitlements paid per pay period, and ensure that any agreement that you have with your employees that varies those award requirements or minimum award rates are contained in a written document, and it has to display some form of consent from the employee. If it comes to a challenge, or if an employee does dispute that they consented to this, it will be up to the employer to show that there was proper consent or proper agreement by the employee. So we would really recommend keeping accurate records, even of any meetings that you had with them, any consultations, and then placing those in the employee's file. Now, we've seen some key changes in 2025. We'll quickly run you through those. In 2025, the right to disconnect has become a workplace right for small businesses. These have already come into effect for large businesses in 2024, but they have now commenced for small businesses. There's been a redundancy development. This is also by way of a case. There was a mining company had made certain employees redundant, but continued to ask contractors to perform the duties of those employees. And the court found that that would not constitute a genuine redundancy under the Fair Works Act if you would get a contractor to do the same work as your employees. So please be aware of those circumstances that would constitute a genuine redundancy or not. Baby Priya's Act came into effect. In other words, if previously you were only entitled to government-funded paid parental leave or unpaid parental leave under the Fair Works Act if your child was stillborn or died, and but this was not an entitlement for an employer-funded parental leave. This has now changed. From 7 November 2025, this has become an entitlement for employer-funded parental leave as well, unless there's an express agreement to the contrary. And then sexual harassment and sex or gender-based harassment is now considered a work health and safety issue. For 2026, the main thing that employers should be aware of is that you will be required to make same-day superannuation payments from 1 July 2026. There will be a 7-day pay period that the payment made, the superannuation contribution made, has to reflect in the superannuation fund. So please be aware of that. There's been a review of the National Employment Standards launched. The first one is with respect to part-time provisions. We've sent out an email requesting requesting members to provide us with some feedback on that and how you would like part-time provisions to look. If you have any ideas on that, or if there's any input you would like to give us, please let us know. And then there's been a proposal to include at least 2 days of flexible work arrangement as a workplace right. This is just a proposal, nothing's come into effect, but it is something to be aware of. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. There's the Master Builders ACT has introduced an annual compliance check. What we propose is if you want to do a quick rundown to see if your records are up to date, you have the correct policies in place, your work health and safety is up to date. We're happy to come to your business and do a desktop review. It's part of your membership. It's something that you can make use of. Just book in a time with us and we can help you with that. If we then identify any areas that need improvement, we'll let you know, and we can work on that together. But this is included in your membership, and we would really say make use of it. Give us a call if there's any area that you would want to improve on or just have a review of. Give us a call and we can book something in for you. All right. So that concludes the workplace relations part of the presentation. We are now going to hand over to Alex as the building advisor, and he will be in a position to take you through. Thank you, Alex.
Hey gang, sorry, we're playing somewhat musical chairs today, but that's all right. I'll just quickly run you through some of the issues that have been brought up recently, mainly by people like the New South Wales Building Commissioner and some of the WorkSafe and those entities that are just showing up a couple of things, just basically on site compliance and what they're seeing out in the industry and how to keep you guys out of attracting unwanted attention. So the first one that they're seeing, or one of the ones that they're seeing, is the notice about building work signs. So a lot of the time they're either not on the site or they're not filled out correctly. What that does is it attracts them to other things that might not be quite right on the site. It also attracts neighbours that might want to tell you guys something that's going on that they've seen, particularly over the holidays, if they haven't been able to get in contact with you. There might have been a break-in, there might have been rubbish flying around, your fences might have fallen down. We probably saw a lot of that with the winds. And it just gives you that sort of extra avenue to make sure that all the neighbours know what's going on, and also so that if anything happens that you're aware of it as well. Just in the slides there, just basically what it needs to be. So obviously we have them here at Master Builders, but the legislation requires them to be 600 by 900 minimum. The notice about building work written on there at least 50 mil high. To be made of durable material, and that includes your writing. You can't put one Sharpie mark on there at the start of the build, get 3 months in, it's wiped off, and then just leave the sign blank. If you're using a Sharpie and it's fading, you really want to keep that updated. Make sure that your information's there for everyone to be seeing. And then there's a little bit of contradiction in some of the legislation that it needs to be in a location easily seen from the outside of the workplace. Now, that's written in the legislation, whereas WorkSafe have their own interpretation of that they think it needs to be on each street frontage. And that may be correct in their eyes, but as the legislation goes, it just needs to be easily identifiable. If someone's walking past the site, they can find that information. So on to the next one is amenities for site. So basically, we see it a lot where you've got amenities, but they might not come into us until you get to frame stage. So you've got neighbours and people driving past, and you've got tradies that are on site, or your concreters or your earth moving, and they've got no loos on site. So then the neighbours are watching them pick a favourite corner in the backyard, which is not always ideal if your sign writing's all out the front, or if the clients are driving past. The same with hand washing facilities or drinking water. Most of us will connect our tap pretty much as soon as we've done our disconnect, if it's a demo site, or if we've got that meter out the front on a new block ready to go, we'll just have our plumbers hook straight up into it. My favourite one is that they recommend you have a lunchroom, but when you're trying to build a terrace house on an 88 square metre block, you're not exactly putting a site shed out the front. So that one, I think there's a lot of wiggle room on even entertaining it, to be honest. Although it does give a lot of people a bit of a laugh. Your site fencing, a lot of the time it starts off well, and then throughout the process you might see that slowly degrading. So what happens, or what we see a lot, is that the trades will be on site and they'll start knocking clips off the top. I mean, as you guys are probably very aware, then you guys get charged for those clips. But not only that, it means that those fences start coming apart. They're more susceptible to being blown down in the wind. Rubbish escapes the site, or you get people entering the site that otherwise probably wouldn't have because they couldn't be bothered trying to jump the fence or whatever. So from a liability point of view and from a litigation point of view, it is really important to keep those sites locked up. And it really gives the homeowners a lot of confidence when they're driving past and they see that their home is safe, because it is a huge investment for them. So And the other thing that we say that is missed, that WorkSafe and the Tree Protection Unit and the EPA are picking up on, is basically those tree protection zones where they've got this established tree, registered trees, or heritage listed trees that don't have the required fencing on them, and they're really starting to enforce a lot of those fines. So it's definitely really important that you do lock those up, keep your trades off it, especially from storing materials and those bits and pieces. and just keep them away from those tree zones. As difficult as they are to work around, we do have to cover ourselves. Erosion control when it's required. So obviously it only needs to be on the downhill slope. It's not going to do much on the top side of a stockpile. But it's really important that you have that there, because the EPA really like saying, or they like seeing you do a good job, and they don't really enjoy picking issues, but they are there. So if you've got any stockpiles on site, it is really easy for the operators, if they're half handy at what they're doing, they can seal those piles up. And once you've got that silt fencing on the bottom side, it really takes a lot of those concerns out of it. If you've got a block that's sloping towards the road, you really need to have that silt fencing on the bottom side so that it's not protruding into the gutter. Across walkways, you don't want some kid tearing down on a scooter that ends up straight through into some of those silt build-ups, because there's just going to be a front wheel down. Same thing with proximity to curbs, drains or waterways. If you've got an activity on site where you've got trucks moving on and off all day, you really need a spotter to be watching those trucks, and you also really need to have someone moving that mud off the road as soon as possible. It limits your liability, it keeps the EPA out of your hair, and it keeps everyone happy, including the neighbours, and at the end of the day, they're going to be the people that are watching you the closest. So, and then you've got your rumble zone. So typically that's a 70 mil ag that incorporates to your driveway. Whether they work as well as just EPA says they do, that's a point of contention, but they are important to have there. They are starting to pick those sorts of things. So it definitely, there's a lot of ways that you can minimise it. Obviously, don't keep your stockpiles on site for longer than you need to. If you're looking for a price point of getting rid of those stockpiles, make sure that you guys on site aren't mixing contaminated waste or pumping their concrete out onto the top of a stockpile, because we do see that a lot. And then you enter that sort of contaminated waste area where it does cost more to get rid of that material. Site cleanliness was another one that the New South Wales Building Commissioner found when they visited Googong sort of end of last year, mid to late last year. So they had a couple of things that they were picking. The first one was site cleanliness. The second one was notice of building work signs, and they were picking ACT plates, but that was more from a trade licensing perspective. So the site cleanliness, bins or somewhere to store your rubbish really needs to be on site before the concreters arrive, because unless you've got a full-time labourer whose job it is to clean up after those trays, you want to be paying them to do that. They really need to be cleaning up after themselves. So if you've got those bins or somewhere to throw it, the trades have really got no excuse to not clean up after themselves. Same thing, remove those stockpiles if you don't need them. If you're going to be using them later for backfilling around the site and you've got the room to keep them there, then that's okay. But if you're treading over them and then dragging mud everywhere, that can be a bit of a problem child. Regularly clean up the site or make it mandatory for tradespeople to do so. A lot of builders are working this into their contract now, that if the trades aren't cleaning up after themselves, then they're paying the people that have to. It can be a bit of a sore point, especially for your subbies, but at the end of the day, you really want your client to have best intentions, and a lot of the time they're driving past that site multiple times a week if you're working for a client. And if they say that their house is just getting treated like a rubbish site, it can be pretty disheartening for them. And same with the neighbours, they'll kick up a stink. With your concrete pumps, if you can wash them off site, I don't think the price point is too contentious. They charge an extra, I think it's $200 to $300. But by the time you get another Bobcat there to try and clean it up, drive it to the tip, pay for your tip fees, drive back, load the Bobcat up, the price point's not too much different. And you're also not tripping over those concrete piles for the rest of the build as well. Again, if that mud or dirt's been tracked onto the road, clean it up immediately. The worst thing you want is it going the whole way up the street, and before you know it, you've got a street sweeper on standby. It's just a cost that if you haven't factored in, you don't need. Verge usage is one that we see just about every time we get one of the members in here from the government. They do like to bring it up. The verges can't be used to park or store materials on unless it is approvals being granted. So you really want to build that into your process or your management plan from the start. That if you do intend to use that verge, even if it's to have windows dropped off or your bricks dropped off, at any point you can't actually use it without approval. And it seems ridiculous, but you do need to take it into account. They're really getting narky with parking fines now, especially if you're parking on that verge section and you haven't rented it out. If you really need to have that parking plan and that storage plan at the start of your build process, because otherwise we've seen that, especially around Garran and those sorts of areas, where people try and get off the verge and do the right thing, but the parking inspectors don't see it that way. So yeah, if you have that in your pre-construction planning and approval, it just makes for that headache-free area that you can ultimately use, especially with these blocks getting smaller and smaller. So final words, just those messy sites are really attracting large amounts of unwanted attention from regulators, from clients, from people posting stuff online. You just don't need your name anywhere around that. It's easier to avoid it than find out later and try and fix that damage. Same thing again, we saw that many sites down because of the wind over Christmas that didn't have the notice of building work signs on them, or they were just blank white the entire way around. So there was no way of telling the builders that, unless you knew exactly who it was, that their sites were down, that, you know, pods were flying away, and all of those other fun things that come at this time of year. And the last thing is just confirm that your trades are licensed and qualified. Particularly in New South Wales, it's important. You have to have it there. Obviously, the ACT is trying to bring that in, but it also helps cover your backside as well. If you've got trades that know what they're doing, that, you know, particularly roofers and waterproofers are the biggest issues that we're seeing on the Fidelity Fund side at the moment. So just make sure that you're covered in all aspects. If you do have any queries, don't ever hesitate to give us a call, or even just walk in where someone will be here to help. And if not, then we'll be happy to get in touch with you as soon as we can. So that's not a drama at all. Thanks for listening. I'll pass on to Lisa.
Okay, afternoon everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. I'm Lisa Dart and I'm your Industry Work Health and Safety Advisor. We're three weeks into 2026 and it's shaping up to be a year for implementation of new laws and increasing regulator activity. So today I'm just going to focus a little bit on hazard management, emergency preparedness, workforce training and competency, and the chain of responsibility in relation to the new heavy vehicle laws that will be impacting the construction industry. So for hazard management, effective hazard management starts with the proactive inspections, clear documentation and updated safety procedures to prevent incidents and ensure compliance. Some of the critical practices we should be focusing on, and especially in the residential sector, our commercial sector has been well drilled with this, and having external accreditations, it's a requirement and a practice that they're now very used to. So focusing more on our residential sector, and this is where the regulator is going to be focusing their resources this year in relation to ensuring that we get the residential sector more compliant with the legislation requirements. So site inspections, it's really important that you're having your process, that you attend your sites, if not on a daily, at least on a weekly basis, and do a walk around and identify any hazards to maintain your compliance. Inspections will help you catch issues before they escalate, such as loose scaffolding or trip hazards, untidy sites, as Alex covered off on in his presentation, are really a focus of both the Work Health and Safety Regulator as well as our building inspectors that are coming out to sites. On the residential sites, do a visual walkthrough. You need to be recording and documenting what you're finding when you're doing these, and if you're finding any hazards or issues, documenting those. You can just keep it in a diary if you carry a diary with you, or notes on your phone with the date, location, and the corrective actions that you've instructed or put in place. Somewhere where it can be saved and is easy accessible, and where you can distribute it among your subcontractors and other people coming to your site who need to know. Hazard identification is about doing risk assessments, and these risk assessments need to be getting done at the beginning of the project, pre-construction, identifying through your building program where your high-risk works are going to be on site, so that you can ensure that as builders you've actually got copies of your subcontractor SWIMs, and that you've got evidence that you've actually reviewed them and assessed them as being acceptable and appropriate for your particular building site, rather than just being a genetic one. The inspectors will go through, and their first point of compliance is that whoever's on site working to that Safe Work Method Statement is actually following and doing what's in the Safe Work Method Statement. So this is a great time at the beginning of the year to go through and review those with your workers and ensure that what they're actually doing and how their process is and what they're actually doing is being reflected in the Safe Work Method Statement. And if you've got control measures in place that are not necessary and that the workers are not following, then remove those and make sure that you're covering your control measures are appropriate to the way in which your workers are working. And if they need to be there, ensure that your workers understand that. So SWIMS review, I just mentioned, really important that we do a review on those and we update with any new equipment or any new processes that we're using. And with the changes to legislation late last year, ensure that your SWIMs include the identification and control of any psychosocial hazards that are related to the high-risk work your workers are undertaking. And also consider those activities that involve the delivery of materials and or building elements, like, for example, precast panels. Ensure that you are identifying and controlling those hazards associated with your shared responsibility under the new National Heavy Vehicle laws. And we'll cover off on some of that in later slides. Regulators will be focusing on residential projects in relation to your scaffold compliance. So non-compliance with scaffold safety will result in hefty fines, stop work orders, and even prosecutions for serious breaches. So regular inspections, clear tagging systems, and ongoing worker training prevent these risks by ensuring scaffold remains structurally sound, properly used, and compliant with the standards. MBA have created a simple checklist to assist in scaffold compliance. So if you're interested in that, it's available to members. So reach out to the team and we can get a copy out to you. Moving on to emergency preparedness. So this is about turning your plans into action through doing drills, clear evacuation routes, having a readiness for first aid and incident responses. Hazard management fails. Having workers trained how to respond is critical. So when the hazard controls that we've got in place fail and we have an injury, it's really critical that our workers are trained in how to respond to that. Your evacuation plans, even for your residential sites, need to identify cleared marked exits, assembly points, and communication protocols. This can be communicated to your workers through emails, text messages, and your site inductions, which are really important. You need to assess the frequency of the changes to your site. So the changing risks will determine how frequently you need to be running your emergency response drills. And your response drills are not just about evacuating the site. It's about what do you do if the excavator rolls over and a worker is crushed? What is your process? How have you trained or instructed the guys on site to react to that? Drills help workers develop automatic responses in a crisis, knowing where to go, what to do, and who to follow without hesitation. Undertaking your drills will reveal the gaps in your evacuation routes, in your communication systems, or your assembly points. For example, if workers don't know the nearest exit or if signage is unclear, drills will expose these issues before a real crisis is in place. So emergencies create chaos, and without practice, people will freeze, they'll take wrong routes, they'll ignore protocols, which can lead to injuries and fatalities. So they reduce the uncertainty and they will build confidence in your working team. Time is critical during fires, chemical spills or structural failures, so every second counts. So a well-practiced team evacuates faster and safer and minimises any harm. Maintain your stocked kits and trained personnel. So ensure for your residential sites that, and it can be part of your contracts for your special conditions, that each subcontractor needs to have a trained first aider available. That way you as the builder on those smaller sites don't need to have a first aider on site all the time, but you've got to have a documented process that shows WorkSafe, that you've addressed that and that there's been plans made to ensure that first aiders are available. Identifying and addressing near misses are learning opportunities because they'll reveal weaknesses in your processes and behaviours without resulting in harm. So, and you can create those hazards before any actual incidents occur. And as I just touched on, training and the competency of your workforce is critical. It produces a quality build and it produces a building process that is safe. So inductions, toolbox talks and refresher training will keep your workforce informed, competent and compliant with the work health and safety obligations. And having trained workers is a critical step in ensuring a safe site. So ensure that you've got an induction process in place. It can be, you know, a call flu sign on your gate, entry to your site that has all of your mandatory requirements, your emergency plan and any other critical information that your workers need to be aware of for those sites. Toolbox talks, deliver them short, focus to the discussion in relation to what's happening on site on that day, address any changing site conditions, reinforcing hazards and safety practices. Under the work health and safety laws, as a PCBU, you're legally required to provide workers with that necessary information, training and instruction, which is why inductions and toolbox talks are so critical, because that's the easiest way for you to be able to deliver that. And providing that and training, you're meeting your duty of care and you're probably reducing the cost of workers' compensation and litigation can be far greater than the investment in training your workforce. MBA can assist you with your accredited and non-accredited training and your refresher courses. So check our offerings on our website and also consider your mental health first aid training, which will be of interest to those doing government projects, as it's now a requirement under the new culture standard for the construction industry. And we delivered a webinar in relation to that late last year. So that will be available on our website for you to have a refresher. MBA training can also customise training for your workforce in your workplace. So examples of this is your committee training, your work health and safety risk management for supervisors. So contract the training team if this is something that you're interested in. So chain of responsibility. The chain of responsibility laws demand shared accountability across the supply chain for vehicle safety, driver fitness, and the compliance with the heavy vehicle national standards and laws. The new law now demands the construction industry's attention to our role in that chain of responsibility. So as part of a shared responsibility, the expectations are increasing for driver competency, fatigue, load restraint and subcontractor compliance. So failure to manage fatigue can lead to liability for all parties involved in the supply chain. Shared responsibility under these laws mean that every party in the supply chain, not just the driver, is legally accountable for the safety and compliance when heavy vehicles are used for deliveries to site. So what does this mean for builders and subcontractors? Builders must ensure that the loads are correctly restrained before vehicles leave the site. They need to ensure that the vehicles are not overloaded. This is specifically relevant to our skip bins. When we're loading those up, we need to ensure that the weights are within the legal capacity of the vehicle before they leave site. Builders cannot pressure drivers or subcontractors to meet unrealistic delivery deadlines that encourage speeding or fatigue. And builders must provide safe access for heavy vehicles and ensure delivery processes don't create hazards, and ensure that you've got your traffic management plans and controls in place, especially relevant in our residential sector with the smaller builds. Canberra streets are not designed wide enough for large vehicles and all the parking that Alex covered off on the restriction with parking for trades. Subcontractors supplying materials have got to ensure their vehicles meet the standards of the heavy vehicle laws. Drivers are licensed and fit to drive, and loads comply with the weight and the restraint requirements. And subcontractors must maintain accurate records of deliveries, load weights, drivers' fitness checks and the driver time. So if you've got workers that are delivering materials and then also doing trade skills on site or labouring skills on site, it's a collective of those hours worked, not just the driving hours that need to be taken into account. This matters because if breaches occur, builders and subcontractors can face penalties, including fines up to $50,000 for individuals and $500,000 for companies. So the fitness to drive obligations apply to all vehicles now 4.5 tonnes and above, and the where you don't have to keep a diary, the PCBU needs to be able to produce records in relation to that. So we've organised for our March webinar for Scott Knowles from the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. He's going to present that webinar for us, and that will give you the opportunity to clarify your obligations and get answers to your compliance questions. So make sure you sign up for that webinar. So just to conclude my little session, work health and safety takeaways and actions you guys need to require to have a look at in relation to your safe work method statements. Update your controls and include your psychosocial hazards and any deliveries, control measures that you've got in your SWMS to comply with the new laws. Include, look at your shared responsibilities, that chain of where you fit in the supply chain and what your responsibilities are in relation to your load restraints, driver fatigue, etc., and book for the March webinar. Update your emergency plans, assess the frequency of your emergency drills that you're running in line with your building program and the changing high-risk works that are happening on your site. And your training needs assess your training needs for the next 12 months. Look at your mental health first aid training. We're delivering that here at MBA now. Book in early, consider customised in-house training, and let us know what training we should be delivering to meet your requirements. And if we can, we will develop those training programs to deliver. Thanks.
Thank you kindly on that side, Lisa. Fishing off the last part on these. I'd like to thank the whole team from Melissa, Alex and Lisa talking about the compliance within the advisory team to go with it. So I'll just recap a couple of points that they brought out. The first one really is that the MBA ACT has put together this compliance checklist, which is a part of your membership. So reach out to the workplace relations team and I'll organise a time and an appointment to come along and have a chat about what is compliance within your area, especially in the areas of WR, work health and safety, and the building advisory area to go with it from there. Second part is, please do not be afraid to reach out. The team is pretty good. They don't carry on, but they do actually be your advisor. They're not to judge you. Come and talk to them about what you're finding, what you're struggling with, or even if you believe you've got the right answer, is to see if you don't second guess yourself on those parts. 2 parts to go. Otherwise, there is 2 parts on the screen at the moment. We do have the weekly updates that happen. So please be sure you're registered with them, get onto the marketing email list, and then you get more updates about what sessions are coming down, what information's been worked on, what submissions are going there from overall from people. And you can actually engage with it from there. Right, and the last slide we've got on the screen at the moment is put onto what is all the advisory team members have access to the workplace at mba.org.au email, and they will answer the question if you direct it to them. So just write to that email address and we go. And the other one is, as provided before, got the phone number, it goes through the list, you'll ring through there. Once you've developed a relationship with one of the team members, they actually probably give them their mobile phone so you can annoy them at any time and see what answers you get from there. But it's not annoyance. It's here for you and working with you to deliver the best services we can to help you run and manage your businesses and help you risk manage the situations that go on there. So my part is thank you very kindly for registering for the first Building Better for the Year series. I hope it's put across the information that's been accurate and right for you. Remember the clients list there. Remember the team is there for you. So reach out and have a chat about any of the topics. As long as it's not personal, those ones, it's okay, but we'll work from there. But other than that, if you've got any questions, please just email us straight through to the workplace at mba.org.au email, and we'll come back to you from there. But thank you very kindly for today and have a good rest of the day time. Thank you.